Hi folks, today you'll have another session of basically me talking to myself on record. It's not the most ideal way, I suppose. We were supposed to have a monthly meeting of concerned people about the ongoing issues with glyphosate poisoning in North America, specifically Canada, and also what's happening to our food system with regard to glyphosate, with some interested parties, and they can discuss and give their opinion. I can give mine or what I'm finding so far with the CFIA test results. But that meeting hasn't happened. The first one of them is being planned. It's not happened yet. You'll probably hear more about it from Richard Miller, who is organizing it sometime in near future, and also probably Bud Reed and Charlotte from Langley might also join, and some others. So anyway, in the meantime, I decided to do this one out of concern, a bit of frustration and with a bit of concern about what I find so far. The thing is, after quite a lot of struggle, I managed to get some 7,000 plus, nearly 8,000 records of foods tested in Canada, and this time by CFIA, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, who has sent me these details, not in a spreadsheet or a database, but basically paper-based or scanned image-based, and I am transcribing them and trying to make sense out of it. First thing I have to say, I have covered more than 3,000 records by now, and that's not even gone up to the halfway mark. First thing I have to say is, I find no instance of regular wheat in any of them. The conventional wheat and its byproduct flour or bread seems to be missing. Now, the records appear to me date-wise. That means the first of the records were tested early in 2015, and I've come to nearly the end of 2015. The whole of 2016 is left, and they have tested more than 3,000 food samples in that period, and not one of wheat. Wheat is probably the most important cereal item, grain item, probably the most important food item per tons consumed, and still it's not there. Why not? Why didn't they check any wheat item in almost all of 2015? This is bugging the hell out of me. And any analysis that you want to do on how good or bad is your food, and wheat is missing in a major wheat eating country, I don't know what to think of it. So I would have initiated more correspondence with the CFIA and the government about it, but I decided to wait till I finish the whole lot, and I'm already dreading what I'll find or what I will still find missing. So, in absence of wheat, the next important groups of food, in my way of thinking, turns out to be rice as a cereal, and also the general group of food that comes under legumes or some sort of beans, and also most of it identifiable as lentils. This is a highly consumed item for the Indian diaspora, those who came from India, as well as I think a large swath of Canadians. And out of these two groups, I find that rice, I'm personally primarily rice eater. I used to take a lot of wheat products also, but I've cut it down simply because of the concern of where the glyphosate content in wheat has gone. I still take organic bread though. So in absence of data from wheat, now it becomes rice and lentil, and out of the rice samples I find, as far as generally rice goes, I find that it's a clean food. It's relatively low in glyphosate content. Yes, there is some glyphosate there, but not too much. And even here, even in a relatively clean group called rice, so far what I found out of top 3,000 records, is that the rice that is grown in Canada is worse than rice grown almost anywhere else with regard to glyphosate. I don't know why. The Canada seems to be particularly bad regarding glyphosate on almost any category, even a good category called rice. If you want to have cleaner than clean rice, as clean as possible, you got to stay away from Canadian made rice. Thailand rice is good, Indian rice is good. There are some other countries that export rice to Canada, and we have some more samples tested here from of rice from other countries, but they are small in number. I mentioned Thailand and India because their numbers are reasonably high and they seem to be pretty good up to now. It almost doesn't matter whether you buy organic rice or basmati rice or this or that. As long as it is rice, it's likely to be low in glyphosate, and if you can stay away from Canadian rice, then it's even better. So that's rice. Now about lentil, I was going to talk about the story of lentil today. This has become a major headache for me because, first of all, unlike rice, lentil group seems to have considerably higher amount of glyphosate, considerably higher. And then it's such a wide variety of crops or seeds that there is also a difference between one and the other. And the seeds that generally are recognized as garbanzo or chickpea, which are very similar to each other, they are almost out of this world. I mean, they are through the roof. Their glyphosate content is insane. And to find out more about what's happening with the lentils, I was going through the data to make, you do permutation combination after the data has been transcribed, whether it's in a spreadsheet or a database. But then, if the material is not described correctly or completely or well, then you cannot analyze it properly because lots of the samples will be missed out simply because they were mistyped or they used a word that is not common to mean the same food. For instance, in the case of lentils, you have the same crop, same seed declared as mung beans, M-U-N-G, beans, and you also have them as their original Indian name, moong dal or moong beans, M-O-O-N-G, D-A-L or B-E-N-S, and sometimes just lentil. So if you don't have a consistently similar name, the software cannot pick them up. So what I had to do was this painful process of creating one more column on the right of it all, and then reading the description and then writing whether it's moong or mung, something common, whether it's a lentil or not, whether it's a legume or not. And this is painstaking because I have already 3,000 records, so I got completely tired of going through it. So I just did 2 countries, that's Canada and India, and 2 countries that have reasonably high amount of lentils being grown. There is also the category called unknown, where CFIA has entered the origin of the food as unknown, and there's a lot of lentils there. I suspect they are grown in Canada too. I cannot prove it, or it could be from United States also. They grow a lot of lentil, and now I learned from Dr. Don Huber that the lentils are really bad there too. And the ones that are like chickpeas and garbanzo being grown in Washington state is being desiccated by glyphosate. This is how actually the glyphosate content is so high. So it took so much time to convert India and Canada. There's more than 1,000 records, and you go through each of them and try to see whether it should be lentil, not lentil, and write down separately so that the database can pick it up or the spreadsheet can pick it up. I got completely tired. I was burning the midnight lamp. So I stopped. We had to find a better way of doing it, and it's incomplete as a result because unknown category is missing and United States is missing. It's only identifiable India and identifiable Canada. All other countries are missing, although all other countries' sample numbers are relatively low compared to these two, and unknown and United States. The other thing is it's incomplete because not all the data is transcribed yet, less than half the data is transcribed. Still it is more than 3,000 and some trend is showing up. So I decided to make this graph, make a stop at what I was trying to do, go back to transcribing more details, and then scratch my head later on to how to make better sense of it. And I'll find a way. I had to bypass this endless amount of manual labor. So samples from India and Canada on lentils are pretty high, several hundreds of them. And here is it. Here is a fact. Out of all the samples from Canada that are identifiable as lentils, if I check all records that had glyphosate in them, either trace or high amount, the sheer percentage of the samples that had glyphosate out of all Canadian grown lentils is 87, nearly 90%. Let that sink into your head a little bit. Nearly 90% of all identifiable marked Canadian grown lentil has glyphosate in it. Nearly 90%. Now think about it from another angle. Supposing you don't want glyphosate in your lentil and you like to have lentils. There is this 10% or 13% as such which doesn't have glyphosate. But, and here's the rub, CFIA does not does not give brand name details, does not give details of what is the source of this good lentil, in which store or what brand name or how to identify it. Since you don't know, you can't identify it. You can't find those good 13% and separate them from the bad 87%. So you just have mixed up stuff and take what you... So your chances of getting bad lentil, if you're buying Canadian grown lentil, out of this first 3,000 samples, your chances of getting bad lentils is 90%. 87%. Can you believe it? Now, the next set of data. How much is the average glyphosate content on Canadian grown lentils in parts per billion? That means total amount of glyphosate found in parts per billion divided by total number of food samples that were identified as lentil and from Canada is 282. 282 parts per billion glyphosate on every sample, and in general 90% of them, 87% of them have glyphosate. Now compare that with India. I only have managed to transcribe 2, and before I got tired and almost fed up with myself. India's readings are not completely clean with regard to glyphosate. I think they are learning this trick of using glyphosate on lentils even in India. I think so, and somebody in India should raise hell about it. However, 40% of the Indian lentils, 40, have some glyphosate in it, either trace or some amount. 40% as against nearly 90% of Canadian ones. And how much is the average glyphosate content in per sample of lentil that's identifiable definitively from India? 25 parts per billion. So again, in Canada near 90% of them are having glyphosate. In India that's 40%. In Canada average count of glyphosate in lentil is 282, and in India it is just 25, less than 1/10 of the average of Canadian lentil. So if you cannot identify which is good or bad, but can identify whether it's from India or Canada, and you do not like glyphosate, I suppose your choice is pretty simple. At least so is mine. And I will stop here. I've already talked enough with myself. I'm actually pretty fed up with the goings on, and I'm tired and getting irritable because when you stay awake all night, don't get a proper sleep, you get irritated yourself. So sorry if I was not very pleasant or not very organized. I'm talking off the cuff. I'm not speaking with a script written in front of me. And I needed to get this one out about the lentil story, especially of foods grown in Canada and India. Thank you.